All right, what is up? I'm gonna be reacting to a Arc Raiders video today. This is more of an informative video to educate both myself and you as viewers. So we're just gonna jump right into that. Credit to Skill Up for posting this video for us to react to, and let's get into that.
And if you're not someone who typically plays these sorts of games, PvP games, battle royale games, extraction shooters, etc., you're probably looking at this and thinking, hey, good for you guys. That game isn't for me, and I will never play it, but I'm glad.
So he's just getting into like the niche and like this very isolated community who likes loot and scoots. They're called loot and scoots because what you do is you just basically you go and gather like items from the world as much as you can carry. They call people like that rats. And then you extract essentially, and it operates like currency. You can sell it. Other games like this are Dark and Darker or Tarkov. Arc Raiders is another one, but it switches up quite a bit. It's a lot different. That's why I'm interested. I've been interested in Tarkov, but this is different because it adds more, like a lot more. But I'm sure he'll explain that.
Glad that you have all found something that you can enjoy. To those people, I say this. I made this video specifically for you, because my goal with this video is not to convince you that Arc Raiders is good, because you probably already believe that. My goal is to convince you that this game actually is for you. You just don't know it yet. And I do mean you, the person who recently quit Destiny and is looking for a game to give them that loot goblin fix. I do mean you, who exclusively plays FromSoft games because you like squaring off against challenging PvE enemies. And I do mean you, who's on their third playthrough of The Witcher 3 and is looking for a new world to explore. And I do mean you, who plays custom Minecraft servers and is looking to collect and craft stuff. And I do mean you, who plays Rocket League and rematch with their mates on a Friday night because it doesn't matter what you're playing so long as you're playing it together. I probably don't mean you, who exclusively plays erotic visual novels, but hey, you never know who you'll meet topside, and in the words of the great man,
I think at any time, any place.
I wasn't the last example.
People can fall in love with each other.
Right now, Arc Raiders is hovering at a daily peak of around 360,000 concurrent players just on Steam, but here's the secret behind that number.
The issue with what he just said was that he's now ranking a game's quality based on popularity. I could be misinterpreting that, but I don't think you should ever judge a game based on its popularity. 300,000 players? That doesn't matter. Why would that matter? Why would I play a game that everybody hops on if it's bad? A lot of people like bad things. A lot of bad things are popular. Axe body spray, for example. Very popular. Very popular. Doesn't mean you should participate. You know.
Many of those people aren't playing it as a PvP game. They're playing it as a co-op PvE RPG looter. Don't believe me? This is the Steam achievement called Unyielding. You can only get it for knocking out 10 other players in PvP. You know what percentage of the player base has that achievement? Less than 50%. You might say, well, clearly that's just people who bought the game but quit before playing much of it. But 70% of players who booted up this game have hit level 10. And let me tell you, it takes a fair number of hours to do that. So that 50% number is not explainable by people tapping out after just a few hours of play. Rather, it's explainable by what I've seen and experienced in my own 50 hours with the game. This is a PvE game just as much as it's a PvP game, and its PvE legs are long enough and strong enough to keep that PvE crowd coming back. And I know that because that's how I've been spending my 50 hours with Arc Raiders. All solo, all the time, 90% of it being PvE or co-op focused, PvPing only when I'm attacked or when the mood takes me, which, you know, does happen from time to time.
So, like, I get what he's trying to say. Like, it's mostly like an engaging game. Like it has a very engaged player base, is what he's trying to say, which is a strong argument. If people are actually getting that achievement, that would indicate a more engaged crowd. But does that mean it's a quality game? Well, a lot of people get, you know, beating the End Dragon achievement in Minecraft. You get that achievement. A lot of people have gotten it. You don't get it till the end of the game or the story. You beat the game. So you have to be an expert to get that. Do you have to like Minecraft to get that, or are you just participating in something? I mean, I see what he's saying though. I'm being too critical, I feel like. Definitely.
So in this review, I'm going to make the case for Arc Raiders as one of the best PvE experiences released this year, and I'm going to talk about its incredible visuals, its industry-leading audio, and its technical polish. I'm going to talk about the Arc enemies, who set a new benchmark for what we can expect from PvE enemies in terms of their design, their intelligence.
I saw those enemies and I just have to say I think they look fucking awesome.
And their animations. I'm going to talk about the PvE metagame and how that allows you to set rewarding goals for yourself each run, as well as the various PvE activities you can do on each run should you choose. But we're also going to talk about that fascinating PvP dynamic and the tension that brings. Very akin to the Division Dark Zone from back in the day, but I actually think it's more helpful to think of it in terms of like enemy invasions in a FromSoft game. Don't worry, we'll come back to it. And finally, we'll talk about those live service elements, and I'll argue that Embark are actually doing a pretty good job on that front, or at least a hell of a lot better than what we're seeing from other recently released live services. But the biggest through line for this review is a simple one. If you have written Arc Raiders off as a PvP only game intended for a specific audience, and you do not count yourself among that audience, then you may have misread it, and you may be missing out on playing something that might end up being your favorite game of 2025. Well, besides Clair Obscura, of course. Arc Raiders is one of the best looking, best sounding, and best running games of 2024.
Yeah, I mean, so far I do agree with him that it looks and sounds really well. Like good, very, very, very good. That's kind of what interested me initially, was like just the quality of the game. It looks good. That's a good selling point on this, but like we'll see how the content actually is, because you can, I mean, we've learned many times over that you can make a game look very pretty and it can still be really horrible. I mean, all of the recent Call of Duties, I end my case.
In fact, I would go so far as to say that it's actually the best overall technical package released this year, with its audio and technical polish hitting a quality bar that most AAA games could only ever dream of reaching. But the visuals are certainly no slouch. While art design is subjective, it's certainly one of my favorite looking games of the year. The foundation is that cassette futurist vibe, which I'm incredibly into as someone who's old enough to remember using actual cassette Walkmans. The retro futurist aesthetic has its origins in stuff like Aliens or Star Wars, but more recently we saw it in the early days of Destiny before Bungie moved away from it, or more notably Starfield, which based its entire design on what it called NASA punk. Embark have their own spin on it, one that is more terrestrial, given that the people of this world haven't escaped to the stars yet, and with the exception of the futurist Stella Montis Research Center, you get a sense that this is a world that leans more into the retro part of the retro-futurist equation. But it's the color that really sets this thing apart, and if you've played Embark's other game, The Finals, then seeing this bold, brash, fearless use of color will come as absolutely no shock to you.
The Finals is actually a good game. Did a really good job with that. I have like almost no complaints with the Finals, other than everybody who plays the Finals is a fucking sweat. That is my primary complaint, and I'm trash at video games, so like that's a you're bad moment for me, honestly. It's just because I'm bad.
It's not quite as bold here in Arc Raiders, but it's no less affecting. The bright colors of the player outfits, the deliberate color palettes of each map, the way the sun and moon can utterly transform a scene based on the time of day or viewing angle. Arc Raiders is an incredibly sumptuous game to look at, and I believe it's one of the things that appeals to that PvE crowd. There's a thing that happens when you take in a stunning landscape, knowing that you can just go anywhere and explore most of what you see. That's a foundational aspect of Arc Raiders, the promise of massive maps full of things to discover. There are 5 maps in the game, all are stunning, and all of them are so big and so dense that after 50 hours of play, I only really feel like I truly know one of them, and even then there are a few spots that I haven't fully explored yet. With maps this big and with it looking this good, it's somewhat of a miracle that it runs as well as it does, doubly so given that this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, and we all know what that means these days. Not here though. If you're interested in the detail, I really recommend Digital Foundry's excellent video on the topic, but TLDR, Embark were very selective about which Unreal Engine 5 features they wanted to utilize, and by cutting back on stuff that they didn't truly need, they've been able to guarantee a baseline level of performance that feels a little too good to be true, but it isn't. The game really does run like a dream on a variety of different PC configs, as well as on consoles. But it's the audio that is the real star of the show here, and for very good reason, because audio is one of the central gameplay mechanics in both PvE against Arc enemies, but particularly in PvP, where the
Yeah, so the audio thing, definitely a weapon for PvP players. It's just super advantageous for anybody who wants to actually like use the environment to kill in like PvP. Very, very useful, especially if somebody's hot micing or if you're not conscious of how you're moving. A lot of people don't think about that, but if you're a PvP player and you encounter, I'm actually unfamiliar with this game. Okay, I'm just reacting. We know I'm unfamiliar. This is educational for me too. But I don't know if this is how this game is, but if you're a PvP player and you encounter PvE players are far less likely to give a shit about how much noise they're making when they're moving around a map than a PvP player is, because they just are not conscious of that. It's not on their minds. So the audio, very important.
slightest noise can give away your location, costing you an entire loadout if you are unlucky or careless.
These 100% grass-fed beef.
This is not going to be at all surprising to anyone who's played Hunt Showdown. That is a game with maybe the best audio of any video game, full stop. The entire map is littered with sound traps like broken glass on the ground or flocks of crows or hanging cans or whatever, and your being able to manage your sound profile is key to surviving, since silence is the foundation of maintaining the element of surprise. Embark took those lessons and applied them to Arc Raiders, and there's no less attention to detail here. This is a game that you play with your ears as much as with your eyes, and the rich soundscape of environmental effects, arc telegraphs, ambient weather effects, footfalls, gunfire, and so much more all provide you with so much data that you're processing in real time as you play. The thought that's been put into all of this and the technical excellence underpinning it are just extraordinary. EA's Battlefield 6 produced some of 2025's best audio design because the sheer spectacle of that soundscape just can't be topped, but Arc Raiders delivers the most informative, nuanced, and playable soundscape of 2025. And while I don't think that audio is enough reason to pick up a game, I will tell you that if you
I am unsure of what he means when he says playable audio. I think Battlefield is very playable audio. I mean, yeah, it sounds good. Maybe he's saying it's just a little overwhelming, but I think sounds in the real world can also be overwhelming. I don't know what he's aiming at there. Does he want it to be unrealistic? I think sounds in the real world are sometimes overstimulating. You know, not trying to argue that Battlefield is like the peak of realism, because of course it's not, but like, what is he trying to say when he says that? Truly.
you haven't played this or Hunt Showdown, you will learn new things about audio design, and you will think differently about audio design after having experienced them. I'll finish this technical block by saying what I said at the top. I think this is the most polished and most complete technical package released this year. While solid technical performance is never a reason to buy a game, poor technical performance is certainly a reason to avoid one, so it's nice that we don't have to worry about that here. More importantly, the art design is stunning, the lighting is often incredible, the maps are vast and beautiful.
I like that he's like pointing out the difference, and like I like the chiseling away at the problems as opposed to trying to make a game sound good because of its very limited and few good qualities. I think you should work your way from the top down when you judge a video game. I do agree with him there. That's good. That's good.
And the soundscape is one of the best you'll ever experience. None of these things on their own are reason enough to pick up Arc Raiders if you otherwise wouldn't, but one of the things they don't put on the box is the nice, warm, fuzzy feeling you get when you boot this thing up. Relaxed and confident that it will not only work beautifully. There's a rare feeling these.
That is very nice. I like that. I like the sound of that. Not a lot of games have been very optimized lately. For example, Stalker 2, when it was released, had horrible optimization issues. Horrible. So, with the modern gaming industry, these developers, the slimy shit they do, I think a game that just fucking works would be lovely. So yeah, I give them kudos for that.
Days, and it's one of the many things that had me itching to hit that launch button as often as I could this past 2 weeks.
This Black Friday gift cleans your retainer.
As impressive as the visuals and sound are, the real technical achievement that Arc Raiders delivers is right there in the title, the Arc. The Arc are some of the most compelling PvE enemies you can fight in any video game because of their clever design, their oppressive intelligence, and their reactive animations, which are frankly the best I've seen for machine enemies like this. The Arc are the robot PvE enemies littered throughout the maps, and if you haven't yet played Arc Raiders, you'd probably be like, well, they're just robots, how impressive could they be? And to be fair, you don't realize just how impressive they are until you spend some proper time with them, because at first when you die to them, you're like, oh man, that wasp really does deal a lot of damage, doesn't it? It's only later that you notice how it's dealing that damage. After chasing you halfway across the map, after finding an angle despite the fact that you're like hiding in a building, and after having it relearn how to fly with just 3 propellers after you shot the 4th off. The starting point for all this are the unique Arc designs. There are 17 Arc enemies in the game at the moment, and each of them earn their place owing to their uniqueness. Internally, enemies like the Pop, Fireball, and Tick will keep you on your...
I really like I like the idea of fighting robots a lot, like sort of like a Terminator vibe. I like that a lot. That's definitely a good change of pace. It's been a long time since there's been something like that. Definitely feels more retro, like you was saying.
Toes when you're rifling through filing cabinets or storage lockers. These enemies have a habit of sneaking up on you when you least expect it. And given that PvP skirmishes can break out at any time, these things are often the difference between you keeping your loot and losing it. But it's the outdoor enemies that are the real star of the show. The Wasp and the Hornet are the cornerstone of most engagements. Wasps are fairly fragile, but their machine gun will absolutely shred you if it gets a line on you. Shooting them in the body doesn't do all that much, especially if you're using the wrong ammo type. But if you can land a heavy ammo shot on one of their propellers, you'll knock that thing clean off. The Wasp can still fly though. It'll just need a second to recalibrate itself now that it's only flying with 3 propellers. At that point, you better have knocked off another propeller or you're going to be in trouble. The Hornets are basically just Wasps, but with one big difference. The front 2 propellers are armored, and that introduces you to one of the central design elements of the Ark, the armor plating. Knocking the armor off enemies like Hornets, Leapers, Bombardiers, and Rocketeers is crucial since they don't actually take damage until after that plating has been removed. It opens up a strategic layer to how you engage these foes, ensuring that you bring the right sort of ammo or explosives to blast away that armor so that you can then lay down some heavy ammo fire at their exposed internals. But don't think it's easy to get a good clean shot at Ark enemies because their AI will not make it easy. I think the biggest surprise you'll have when you start fighting these things is just how smart they are. We spent a lifetime playing games where your average PvE enemy has a set of very specific canned behaviors and animations, and they'll leash if you pull them too far away from where they're patrolling, etc. It's really not.
That's nice because like it makes for a less predictable like enemy. Some games are just horribly predictable. Like you could just it's a pretty silly example, but like the concept of training zombies in zombies mode, horribly predictable. They will walk in a straight line and you can pick them off one by one. There are lots of video games with issues like that, and if there's a workaround for that and an intelligent enemy in a video game, it makes for some interesting gameplay that would probably give the game some points.
Like that with the Ark. When they see you out in the open, they do not stop following you ever, to the point where I've been running away from them trying to find some cover, just being like, dude, can you just fuck off? But they won't leave you alone, and eventually they're gonna get you.
Like, I can also see it with like a certain game. If you are able to run away from mobs and just avoid combat that way, that's fine with some. But I definitely don't think you should be able to get away with that for a lot of it, because again, it is an enemy. So why would it just give up after a little chase? That doesn't make sense. It's never really made sense, but we've just been okay with it because the gaming industry has evolved over time, but now it's evolving better because we're starting to make realizations like this where we say, oh, well, if I punch somebody in the face and they were really pissed at me, they'd probably chase me for a little while instead of just giving up immediately within the first 15 feet. Which is the aggro radius of some mobs. But in this case, it sounds like it will not leave you the fuck alone, which is nice. That's nice. That's good. It is your enemy, after all.
Challenge posed by these enemies is another thing that I think makes Ark Raiders appealing to PvE players. If those enemies were less threatening, less challenging, and less intelligent, loading into a run would be less exciting because each of these PvE skirmishes would play out in the exact same way. But the design, tuning, and intelligence of these enemies makes every single engagement a risk. Every single one! I cannot count the number of times where I thought I'd just take out a lowly Wasp only for 2 of his mates to then rock up and I quickly lose control of the situation, losing my entire kit in the process. But there's one other thing that makes the Ark special, and it's their animations. I really wasn't kidding when I said that the Wasp has to relearn how to fly after losing a propeller. You can see them do this as their chassis responds to the exact location that the bullet strikes and the loss of that specific propeller and what that does to their stability, and the seconds afterwards as they spin and tumble trying to recalibrate themselves. Sometimes it can't, by the way, and it hits the ground and it'll explode, but often it will keep going. The Leaper, though, seen this thing already, but it's a giant spider-like enemy that will literally leap at you from 100 meters away or more. As it does this, its limbs aren't clipping through terrain as you'd expect they might. They're all responding 100%.
I'm honestly a lot more curious how the extraction is going to work.
Caught on stuff and topple over. Fighting it is often terrifying because of its ferocity and the spectacle of it leaping across the map to sit on you, but it's also often funny because it looks so goofy as it struggles to keep its feet.
Ooh. Okay, that looked good. You gotta admit that looked good. That looked really good. Look at how it falls. Like that was
Flipping
nice.
through terrain as you'd expect they might. They're all responding 100% accurately to the geometry around it, and that means this thing can get caught on stuff and topple over. Fighting it is often terrifying because of its ferocity and the spectacle of it leaping across the map to sit on you, but it's also often funny because it looks so goofy as it struggles to keep its feet.
That looked good. That was nice.
Regardless though, the flailing about you're seeing looks different every single time you see it because the animations are not canned in a traditional sense. Instead, they're actually trained by an AI model. Embark actually posted a blog about this, revealing that all of the arcs were essentially taught how to move by a training model that would reward them with virtual treats as they completed exercises. I don't claim to fully understand it, but it's a fundamentally different approach to animation design than we've seen before, and it's one that is AI-led. However, it's not only AI. After the AI model has done its work, experienced animators come in to refine the work. The model may say that this is the most efficient means for the arc to move from A to B, but an animator then comes in to refine it so that it looks good and so that players can actually.
So I think what he's saying is like they had like an AI that trains like real robots how to walk, like is sort of the brain. I think it's like saying that like if they were to make these video game creatures into real functional robots, this would be the most efficient way it would walk via testing it with an AI program. That's interesting.
Actually interface with it if you're trying to shoot limbs off, etc. Combination of the Ark's designs, their intelligence, and their animations make them really interesting foes to engage each and every match. No two engagements are ever the same, and I think that Embark has truly raised the bar when it comes to PvE enemy design. I really do. It's ironic that these machines feel incredibly lifelike. The scrappiness of a 1v1 against a wasp, or the terrifying threat of a leaper or a bombardier is something that you need to experience firsthand, and it's another of those things that makes this a very compelling package to PvE focused players. These enemies are not just noise traps or resource sinks, they're intelligent, adaptive foes who contribute to emergent gameplay moments just as often as other players do. That to this point we haven't actually spoken about the core gameplay loop of Arc Raiders. I think that's important because the term extraction shooter is thrown around a lot without there being much specificity about what it actually means, and that's because every game in this subgenre has its own totally unique approach to things. I'll tell you how Arc Raiders approaches it though. Arc Raiders is a game where you create your own character, but it's just aesthetics, there's no stat sheet or whatever. You live underground, but you can't explore this space. There's no social hub, though it would be nice if they added something like that. It's essentially just a set of menus with NPCs you can buy things or collect quests from, and a workshop full of benches where you can craft stuff. Again, that's just menus. The most important menu screens are your stash, which is where you dump all the stuff you've collected, and your inventory or your loadout, which is what you take on a raid, aka when you go topside to actually play the game. You don't always have to bring your own gear when you go topside. There's a free loadout option that's always available for a risk-free run. Perfect for when you're looking to collect a specific item or complete a specific quest, with the downside being that you don't get a safe pocket, which is a loadout slot that lets you bring stuff back to base even if you die topside. So you're always going to be in a position where you can play Arc Raiders even if you lose absolutely everything that you own, and you're always in a position where you can just play for fun without risking anything valuable. So what are you doing topside? Well, as I've been saying throughout this whole video, you're not.
Some would argue that's actually like not disciplinary enough. Like with reward, there needs to be like that sense of failure a game can give you too. I think it's important that the game kind of disciplines you, only because it makes getting the reward more appreciated. A game like Dark Souls, super hard, disciplines you so much. But when you beat that boss, you get a rush of dopamine. Guaranteed.
Not just PvPing. In fact, most of the time, you're working towards a set of goals that the game has set for you or that you've set for yourself based on something you might want to craft. The quests are an important starting point. There are 60 of them currently in the game, and they're really smart because they function as a sort of extended tutorial. They begin by asking you to visit certain places or loot certain things, but eventually they'll teach you more advanced techniques, like the fact that you can use certain arc components as grenades, for example, or how to make use of zip lines to reach tricky locations. After 50 hours, I am still working through these quests, and I'm up to the point where they're now asking me to do a number of things in sequence, visiting a specific location, looting a certain thing before going to a different location, repairing something, taking out a certain enemy type, etc. All of this has been bubbling away in the background for me as I've been playing. Sometimes I'm really focused on knocking over quests and I'll get, 3 done in 3 runs, but other times I'm focused on other things and I won't accomplish a single quest for 4 or 5 hours. Sometimes I do try to do a quest, but I get distracted or I get ambushed, and that's part of the fun too. So these quests will keep you engaged for quite some time, and they'll force you to not only learn the game, but also interface with locations and mechanics that you might not have otherwise done so without the quest nudging you toward it. The quests are just one thing that you might want to progress. There's also your skill tree. Every time you go topside, you earn XP for doing stuff, and the more stuff you do, the more XP you get. A big 30-minute run full of high-level looting, killing heaps of arc, and plenty of PvP will net you a huge amount of XP that gets turned into skill points, with the skill tree awarding handy upgrades like more stamina, faster looting, the ability to craft during a raid, and so much more. It's extremely well balanced, since a level 1 player can still compete with a level 75 player in a PvP matchup, but the high level player does have a slight advantage depending on the circumstances of the engagement. So what else?
I personally don't like it when games gatekeep game mechanics behind quests, but only because I think that quests should primarily give you special items that are sort of an addition to base game mechanic. But that's just my personal opinion.
Well, there's also your workshop upgrades. Crafting is a big part of Arc Raiders, and to craft high level items, you'll need to upgrade your benches. You do this by looting resources topside, with high level upgrades requiring components from the more threatening Arc enemies. I'm still chasing some of those upgrades after 50 hours. Speaking of crafting, most of the good stuff requires you to learn the blueprints first, and they're looted topside. There's no rhyme or reason to how they spawn, so it's just about playing and looting. Gotta catch them all. That obviously folds into the whole crafting economy, where you might have a goal of crafting specific weapons or ammos or explosives or utility items, etc. And the best stuff needs the best materials, so you'll absolutely find yourself in situations where you're going topside looking for very specific things so that you can craft something. Things start to get a little more meta when we talk about the weekly trial system, which opens up once you hit a certain level, and it rewards you for completing certain activities. It can be really challenging content, like dealing damage to the Queen, a massive War of the Worlds style foe that you do not want to tussle with unprepared, down to things as simple as, loot lots of plants. Completing these trials each week gives you a ranking, with higher ranks rewarding item kits. Again, most of this stuff is PvE focused. Finally, there's also the expedition system, and this is related to one of the most important parts of the way that Embark are approaching the extraction subgenre. This is a genre where server wipes are common, aka every few months, everything you've accumulated gets deleted. This is to reduce loot bloat. Otherwise, you get a situation where there's just so much high-level loot floating around in the game that it's all that anyone has. Arc Raiders does it different. See, in Arc Raiders, the level of power differential between a maxed out level 75 player rocking the best possible gear versus a level 1 player rocking a free kit, that differential is actually quite small, which means that a level 1 player still has a chance. Because of that, it's less important for server wipes to happen, and as such, they don't happen. There is no wipe. If you want to keep all the gear and blueprints and progress you've collected forever, then you can do that. Embark will never take it away from you, and this is another thing that makes Arc Raiders more appealing to a PvE audience. Your progress remains. However, for the super hardcore who love the thrill of the grind, there's also the option to send your character on an expedition, which basically involves dumping a huge amount of resources into the creation of a transport pod that your character then rides off into the tunnels, never to be seen again. You lose that character, all of your upgrades, your blueprints, your stashed items, everything. You will get some bonus XP on the next character you make, but you're effectively starting from scratch. I think it's a really cool approach to the problem of loot bloat, one that gives the hardcore players that permanent sense.
Expedition. I'm curious to see how that's going to work. That is interesting. An expedition. At first, I was thinking something more along the lines of like No Man's Sky, as opposed to like just volunteering all your gear. That's cool. I mean, that still is somewhat similar, but still a different approach. I can get behind that. It's kind of cool. I don't really understand the incentive, I guess. Maybe I missed what he was saying, but
of chase and progression while also respecting the time of more casual players. So those are the various ways that you'll progress your character that don't involve PvP, but those are all systems and progression driven. In addition to that though, there are a number of gameplay elements that give PvE focused players plenty to do topside. The map is littered with fallen Arctech that you can pry open to reveal its valuable gizzards. There are field crates that need to be hand delivered to their receptacles and they award some nice loot. You can call in supply drops and they too will award plenty of handy kit. There are areas locked behind doors that require certain keys, and so finding those keys and managing to use them before they get stolen is really fun, especially now that they fixed the door exploit. But there are also puzzles which you can complete, which are often best done in a group, and they play sort of like a raid puzzle in Destiny 2 almost. I haven't done any of them yet since I only play solo. They look pretty damn cool and they award some nice loot too. I'll summarize all this PvE stuff this way. There is a lot of questing and crafting and character progression going on in Arc Raiders, stuff that appeals to your average PvE focused player, and you don't need to do PvP in order to accomplish these things. The compelling Arc enemies combined with the progression systems, combined with the PvE loot activities you can do topside, all give you plenty to do without needing to hunt down other players. Sure, some of them will come along and hunt you, absolutely, but more often than not, particularly
so far it just sounds like PvP is completely an optional thing, but that's what he's leaving out. He hasn't really left it out, but he doesn't talk about it very much. It's not optional when it presents itself to you. So, if you plan on playing, I'm sure you should probably keep that in mind.
particularly when playing solo. I think you'll find that people you'll encounter will want to cooperate with you in a PvE context rather than fight you in a PvP context. But let's dig a little deeper into that dynamic, since I know that's the one thing that most people are worried about when they choose to steer clear of Arc Raiders. So at this point, I've really been stressing the idea that there's actually a lot here in Arc Raiders for PvE focused players to sink their teeth into, but I don't want that to be misconstrued as you never need to PvP, because that's definitely not true. You will need to fight other players at times.
Never mind, I'm just an asshole.
Absolutely. But the way those PvP encounters do or don't happen is really interesting, and I don't think you can talk about PvP encounters without also talking about the spontaneous moments of cooperation that happen just as often or more often, depending on how you choose to play. So yes, this is a game where you can kill anyone you see to take their loot. It's a game with proximity chat where you meet someone and they'll be like, hey, I'm friendly. And then you let your guard down only for them to whip out a shotgun and KO you. It's a game where you can be sitting there taking out a high level arc enemy for like 5 minutes, only for someone to then come along and shoot you in the back while you're looting. It is a game where you could try to be friendly, only for the other person to reject your advances. All of these things happen, and they happen regularly depending on how you choose to play. For example, squads, solos with solos and squads with squads. In groups, players are naturally more hostile, but solo, I would say that like 80% of the people I encounter are not hostile. They're just trying to collect some loot and craft stuff and complete a quest. They aren't looking to fight any more than you are. So choosing to play solo is, ironically enough, a safer experience since you're less likely to be attacked by other players. Similarly, using proximity chat is a really important way to diffuse the tension, because when you can hear that there's an actual person on the other side of that microphone, there's a thing that happens inside of you where it just becomes much harder to pull the trigger.
I'm friendly. I love you. I love you. Kiss you. Shoot.
The social aspect of proximity chat isn't just for griefing, though you will certainly get some of that. It's actually more important as a tool for spontaneous connection. Most of the time when I hear someone on prox chat, I'm like, this person is probably cool. It's the people who aren't using a mic and aren't using emotes that you really need to be worried about. There's also this natural rhythm to each round and where you play on the map, and understanding that rhythm is very important for avoiding PvP if that's what you want to do. Most spawns are towards the edges of the map, and there's just less player activity there, so if you're on a loot focused run, just stick to the outskirts, it's safer. Similarly, as the clock ticks down and there are fewer extraction points available, you can expect that more and more players will be funneled to those same locations, so getting in and out before that starts to happen is also helpful. So the point I'm trying to make here is that by playing solo, by using proximity chat, and by understanding the ebb and flow of a run, you can significantly reduce your chances of unwanted PvP. Not remove it, of course, but reduce it, and as you become...
Okay, this guy is like definitely showing bias. Like he's preaching towards the guy who wants to avoid PvP altogether. I don't think you should, if you're that set on avoiding PvP, don't play a game with PvP. Plain and simple. Don't play it. He's really preaching to the guy that just wants to log on to his Minecraft game on peaceful. Like that's not why people play this game. There are people that play games like that just shouldn't be on games like that. And that's in my opinion, that's the type of people who ruin games like this. Because it's both PvP with the dangers to simulate an immersive, realistic experience. PvP. You're gonna want PvP as well. The risk, at least.
More experience, you really do feel like you have a huge amount of control over if and when PvP happens. But it will happen, and it's okay that it happens. And I think that's another fascinating thing to talk about when it comes to Arc Raiders. If you go to the...
God damn it, okay. I feel like I'm just gonna say something, and then he'll immediately prove me an asshole immediately after every time. So, for at least a little bit, I'm just gonna shut the fuck up.
Subreddit, you're going to see a lot of posts, and I mean a lot of posts of people showing clips of them getting backstabbed by someone, or someone stealing their loot after they worked hard to bring down a queen or whatever. There's often this air of like, why are people like this? It's disgraceful. But it's like, man, I get it. It sucks when you lose your shit. It sucks when someone
But that's the beauty.
trash talks you. But if this stuff didn't happen, this game would be kind of boring. It's the threat of the rat that makes this game fun. If you knew that everyone was playing fair all the time, there'd just be so much less tension and so much less a sense of victory when you manage to successfully extract. I think you just got to be philosophical about it. Sometimes you meet someone who'll actually help you bring down that rocketeer and will let you have all the loot. Sometimes you'll meet a rat fuck who will shoot you in the back after acting like your bestie. That's just life. As a solo player who doesn't PvP all that often, I've kind of come to think of the PvP ganking as sort of akin to invasions in a FromSoft game. And yeah, I know, not everything is Dark Souls, relax, alright, just hear me out. I kind of play this game as a PvE game, and 80% of the time, when I encounter other players, it's jolly cooperation. The other 20% is like when a phantom appears, when I'm in Analondo, and it can be at the worst possible moment when I'm clearing my way to a new bonfire surrounded by hostile PvE foes, but that's just how it is. And that invader hasn't got any other objective other than to wreck my day. That is it. And maybe I triumph and maybe I die, but it's fun.
And like we can see this on games like Tarkov or Rust. Like there's definitely people who will just make it their entire priority to just fuck your day up, which is fine. There's lots of people like that. But does it make it wrong? Like, is it wrong to dedicate yourself to making someone else's gameplay experience not what they expected it to be, if the goal of the game is to do so? Like not to say that PvP is explicitly to ruin someone's day, but like there is that's kind of the satisfaction you get in a game like this out of being PvP is because because they worked hard to get the stuff they got, and now here you are just prancing along, and you have gun, you have ammo, you shoot, you kill, you take. You didn't have to go search for it. They searched for it. And that is what you're exploiting. You're taking advantage of the fact that they put in the work. And that's why you're a rat, is because you're taking their stuff after they spent potentially hours gathering it, and it took you not even 20 seconds to spot them across the way, shoot them, and take all their shit. That's the beauty of it, is you're able to be a rat. And that's kind of I also think it's beautiful because like the people that ruin this game that he just said would make the game boring, that complain about PvP players targeting them, shouldn't be playing games like that. And it kind of just, they're torturing themselves. They're volunteering for the torture. Why are they playing? You should understand the risks before you download the game, right? And you should agree. By playing the game, you agree to that risk. You agree to it.
Exciting when it happens. It's the reason we leave the online mode turned on when playing a FromSoft game, since it'd be safer to turn it off, right? It's not exactly the same here, but it's close enough, and I think framing it that way is kind of the clearest analogy I can offer to PvE players who might be turned off by this, thinking that it's purely a PvP game. But ultimately, I think the most compelling story about player interactions in Arc Raiders isn't the backstabbing, which is incentivized, it's the collaboration that isn't. Helping out other players doesn't net you bonus XP or whatever. There's always a temptation to just shoot on sight and steal their shit, but in a classic game theory framework, pushing past that temptation can and often will lead to more lucrative results, since you can accomplish more by working together. I think more people than you'd expect have cottoned onto that fact, and as such, topside isn't always as scary as the extract.
I think you would be ashamed by the integrity of man.
Action genre label might have you believe. Another thing that I think often scares off PvE players when they see these sorts of games is that they're turned off by the live service bullshit, the battle passes, the FOMO, the cash shops demanding more and more money.
What if this guy is just like coming up with a grand scheme right now? That's the whole purpose of his video. What if he's just a PvP player that's trying to sell this game to like primarily PvE players, and he just wants to lure them in like they're little fish, and then when they get in, he's just gonna like that's what he wants. That's what he wants. He's really selling this hard to PvE players.
Icky feeling that you get when you log in and see a menu that's more interested in selling you things than actually helping you play the game. Battlefield. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that Arc Raiders demonstrates far more restraint in these areas than most other live service multiplayer experiences, to the point where you kind of forget that it's a live service. I mean, we already spoke about the lack of server wipes. The fact that you get to keep your gear forever is pretty cool. There is a cash shop that sells skins for your character and your chicken, very important. These skins actually just got a price drop since the community felt like they were too expensive, and so Embark actually listened. Don't see that every day in the world of live service. I also think that these cosmetics are very in keeping with the visual style of the game, and that matters a lot in this modern era where many of the biggest live service games are completely abandoning their aesthetics. COD did it ages ago with their Nicki Minaj and Beavis and Butthead skins. Battlefield 6 is doing it right now with a bunch of skins that look like teenagers took a spray can to some army camo, and Destiny's about to do it by letting you dress up as a stormtrooper. Honestly, I'm pretty heartbroken about that one, not gonna lie. Point is, There's an immersive quality to Arc Raiders' visual design, and the cosmetics that you're seeing here are very consistent with that, so let's hope it stays that way long into the future. Also important to note that cosmetic outfits are the only thing you can buy with cash. You cannot buy any weapons, items, XP boosters, etc. Arc Raiders is 100% free of pay-to-win bullshit. What else? Well,
No pay to win sounds good to me. Too many pay to win games nowadays. No pay to win? That's beautiful. Beautiful. Wonderful.
well, there is a battle pass because of course there is. But you know what? I'm getting through it at a pretty steady clip, and I haven't been actively focusing on doing the daily challenges that award the battle pass currency. It does feel better calibrated than the battle pass of the finals, because I remember that being painfully slow when I was playing that game. But yeah, this feels broadly fine, I think. And honestly, the rewards are just some items you could typically loot or craft anyway, as well as some nice cosmetics, so that's fine. There was also a limited time event that they ran which awarded more resources and its own cosmetic outfit, and it was really quick to get through that, to be honest, a really pleasant surprise. But most importantly, you never once have to open up the cash shop or even the battle pass. Like, it's just there for those who want it. It's not thrust under your nose every time you log in or do anything. It feels like Embark are quietly confident that this game will make money over the long term, and so Arc Raiders doesn't feel as greedy or as desperate as so many other live service games currently feel.
The thing I would advise against doing is putting too much faith into the team behind it, okay? Because a lot of these teams are usually, they'll put on a front, like they'll put out some bangers, it'll be good for a while, then they'll just turn on you when you're most vulnerable, and they'll just take advantage of their fan base. You see it all the time. This is not like a unique experience. This happens all the time, and that is one of the biggest problems in the gaming industry today, is that you really can't trust big name brand game companies, Bethesda being one of them, just really milking Skyrim, you know, and now charging for mod content, and they virtually pay their modders nothing. They're just taking advantage of their fan base. And you see it all the time. Bethesda, a once very renowned, you know, well-backed, very honest company, no longer. You see it. I would advise against putting too much trust just yet.
So look, not to overstate things, but I do think Arc Raiders is a bit of a milestone moment in the history of shooters, and it's an arc that we've seen before, pun intended. A concept comes along, like the MMORPG.
Respectfully, I don't know if it's like a milestone. It kind of looks like PUBG. However, it is cool looking.
And then WoW cracks the code to make it mainstream. Dota exists, and then League of Legends comes along to take it to a whole new level. Battle Royale comes along in armor mods before PUBG makes it mainstream, and then Fortnite figures out a way to make it huge with kids. Here, the extraction subgenre has existed for some time now, obviously pioneered in large part by Tarkov, but other games have had their own crack at it too. Embark have cracked it wide open, to the point where Arc Raiders is
Popular with kids and weird adults, to go back to Fortnite real quick. A moment of silence. Moving on. All right.
one of the top selling games of the year and the 5th highest played game on Steam in a given day, with absolutely no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Central to all of those other examples is the idea of taking something that was pretty janky and pretty hardcore and then refining it. And that's exactly what Embark did with Arc Raiders. There's no jank here at all. In fact, it's like anti-jank. It's the most polished and complete technical package released in 2025. From a gameplay perspective, many of the rough edges that define this subgenre have been smoothed back. Things like arduous inventory management or instant time to kill or loot wipes. That's naturally going to pull in more people who might have already been interested in an extraction shooter, but that audience alone would not have been enough to have propelled Arc Raiders to these heights. It's the other stuff they've added that's pulled in those players who have never played a game like this before. All of those quests and character progression pathways, all of those PvE activities you can do during a raid, these incredible Arc enemies who are so smart, so threatening, so relentless, and so satisfying to bring down. When I interviewed the game's director, Alexander Grundle, I asked him, is Arc Raiders going to be worth picking up if you're not a PvP-focused player? And he said to me, certainly, absolutely. And honestly, I didn't really believe him. I didn't think he was lying. I just thought he was doing a bit of PR work, sort of positioning the game as being all things to all players. But having now spent 50 hours with this game, he wasn't bullshitting, man. And I think that it's this component more than anything else that has made Arc Raiders the blockbuster that it is. It's an extremely engaging PvE game, on top of being a fascinating and smartly balanced PvP game. And it just so happens to look and sound incredible while doing all of that, and it isn't stuffed full to bursting with the live service bullshit that will drive you crazy. It's a phenomenal package. I expect I'll put hundreds more hours into it over the coming months and years. I strongly recommend it to you.
Well, I think that it looks good, and I think it has a lot of promise. I will probably be picking this up. In terms of how impressed I am, I'd say I'd give it like a 7. It's about a 7. It's not the most impressive shooter that I've ever seen. Am I excited for it? Yes. I'm quite excited for it. I'll probably end up grabbing this. I think this guy really harped on like the PvE experience as opposed to the PvP side of things. He didn't really harp on the PvP side of things very much. There was no detail given there. But the PvP looks and sounds good. It's good. Is it the best? I doubt it. But we'll give it a try. That's all for now. I will definitely have updates on this. See you later.